Yeah. You just want to start here, yeah?
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay. Cool. We're going.
Good.
The fact that the most frustrating part of games, but it's also the part of games that has the most promise, is the idea that whatever gameplay elements you decide to include can help to drive home the impact of the story.
Tough to control these little kids the same way if you're babysitting these little kids, it'd be tough to control them, you know? I mean, you can imagine that you're just watching over them and there's this deadly path, and you know, you have to make sure they don't step off this path. Like if you're a babysitter, that would be difficult, and you kind of controlling them at the same time, you know, it kind of cues into the idea of controlling little kids, and I felt that also reinforces the story as well.
Well, ask me what the deal is.
What's the deal?
All right, we're sitting here, San Francisco, the Mission District, about a block, or about 1/8 of a block from my house, as you guys can tell down the sidewalk. My name's Nathan Sisler. I'm sitting here with David Lanes, my roommate. You say hi, David.
Hey guys.
The video game is called The Land of Lamia. It's a single-player adventure puzzle game. I've been an artist since I was a little kid. My background really is in visual art, like drawing, painting, and then my industry experience working in the game industry has been concept art, biz dev, and so I was always good with the visuals, and I've done a lot of different projects, a lot of different stuff, but I realized as I started creating this game that this game is actually sort of branched off from like early childhood stuff. I feel like I was one of the reasons I really want to make this video is just because I like watching these videos. You know, I like hearing the story. I like watching these videos of these indie developers that make a video like this, and I like more than half the time I like the video more than I like the video game that they created, which is a little bit unfortunate, but maybe it's not. I mean, maybe at the end of the day, like this is a lot of the real art of indie games. But I think when you play the indie game, you kind of think of the developer, you think of like, you know, what they were going through while they were creating it, and you know, some could say that might add a little bit to the game experience, you know. And so if you don't talk about, you know, what you went through to build something, maybe that subtracts a little bit from the gaming experience, you know, on an indie game level. And maybe this might help people play the game a little bit. Maybe they'll enjoy it a little bit more. Who knows?
Hold on, hold your fucking horses. Alright. Go for it.
This right here is the beast. It's got the little window so you can see the fans. That's how you know it's good.
Clear the light. Get out of the light. I can't see it. There we go. That's it.
I think at any given time during the game development process, I would be between Unity, Maya, and Photoshop. I would have all three of those programs working, and because I would be painting textures in Photoshop, I might be altering UVs in Maya, and then I might be checking it in Unity to see how the textures are feeling. So,
Jesus.
Yeah.
So you gotta have sort of a burly computer to do all that shit, huh?
I mean, it's a luxury. It's not a requirement. Like, you can try and keep in your mind how things are looking, developing in Photoshop, painting those textures. But when you can develop, work on a texture a little bit, paint it out, get it to a pretty good spot, save the file, watch it instantly update in Unity, check it in Unity, get
cool.
real-time feel for how that texture is working.
Mm-hmm.
That is like so key to development. That is, I mean, that's just when things, as an artist, that is when things like really start to feel kind of magical. You're like,
Sure.
You just feel powerful, and you're like, wow, this is like what an age we live in. So these are, when I was thick in art school, I was filling up a sketchbook like this. It was like 100 sheets. I'd fill up one of those like in my thickest time, like about every month. There's one more drawing. Just want to start things off. But this one was, I think I did this drawing in marker when I was around 19 or 20. I think I was like around age 20 when I did this, and I just looked at it and I'm like, I was like, this is my masterpiece. Which seems pretty ridiculous to me now, but again, just I think I love the idea of not like the epic robot battle, and not even the weapons on a robot, but kind of the camping out, like this guy, this some kind of swamp, some island, some like some other planet, some adventure, and then the campsite, like not what's going on in the heat of battle, but what goes on behind the scenes. What do you do when you just explore? How do you get into this robot? There's like a little doorway, there's a ladder coming down here, there's like joints and wires and inner workings. But so yeah, these are earlier drawings. Get to some of the key. So this is one that interests me recently. Kind of this giant teddy bear, or I don't know what you want to say. Maybe the teddy bear's not giant. Maybe the plants are tiny. But I feel like I did a ton of this type of fantasy, this type of the kind of the outside of the point outside of the key moment, you know, like if there was a giant and that giant had a kid, maybe that kid lost his teddy bear 1,000 years ago, and 1,000 years ago passed, and the thing got covered in dirt, and then trees grew on it, and what do you have? You have this old teddy bear, you know, that's been lost over an eternity, and you know, it's just a big legend. It's a mystery. Those are the type of things that I think inspired me even when I was much younger. This was another, I think, key illustration for the same reason. I mean, something lost, something in the middle, you know, a statue or somebody turned to stone that has been buried for so long that a tree has grown around it, and somebody might hang out on it without even knowing exactly what it was. I think there was one in here that I just... Again, there was a time when I just loved markers, but this page, you know, I used to spray paint my sketchbooks, and I think I spray painted this, and I think I may have stenciled out this little bit down here at the bottom, but I just
really
always
cool.
feel like this represents kind of the core of this game. These like exploring this world, this like world full of mystery. This like what is the, like where are the giant mushrooms or something? It seems ridiculous sometimes I think about it. Then again, I mean, this stuff was kind of cool. Just this device, how does it work? And to be honest, I couldn't look at these sketchbooks for a long time because I hated this stuff. It seems so amateurish, and
Doesn't look really amateur.
well, now I go back and I mean, I just look at this kind of things like my design sense. This balloon structure here with the fabric pulled over it and the strings. It's a compelling design. I impress myself sometimes and go like, yeah, I was being a designer and not just kind of a superficial artist or something like that. I wasn't just trying to look cool, but like this, the fact that this thing is ripping apart and there's little stitch marks in this and blankets or something attached together. Those are little things that tell the kind of story that I like to tell right now. So I look at them and I can kind of be impressed with myself a little bit.
Sure.
From back in the day. Picture of my dad here. So, my game studio, whatever that means, because I'm like pretty much the only guy. But it's called Eddie Games. It was named after my dad. His name was Ed. He passed away like 3 years ago. But I mean, like everybody loved him. And from what, for me personally, it's a little tough to imagine because I feel like I piss people off within like a handful of seconds. But I mean, I think it would be very hard to find anybody who could speak negatively about my dad here. He was just like full of life and positivity and just like, just happiness, and everybody just loved him for that. So, like I don't know what it means to like create a game. I figure, Eddie Games is, if I make games, and I want to obviously want to continue to make games and all that, but if just any of the charm or whatnot, I'm not superstitious, but like if I bring any of that into the games, it'll just be any of my dad's charm. It'll just, how could I go wrong with my games? They'll just they'll purely be entertainment. So I think we could kick it in here. My love was just of art, you know, and again, the more I look at it, the more I love just storytelling in general from a young age. But when you look at the fundamentals of storytelling, you know, how it started and its roots and how it has evolved over time, you can imagine it began just, you know, campfire setting. Like, you get together, you and your buddies, you got a campfire, you just tell a story. Like, you just sit there. And that story is just all dialogue, it's all words. And people love that from the beginning of time. I mean, I think that that's just one of the most, that captivates people's attention for the longest amount of time out of a lot of art forms. So you look at that, I think the next step to that dialogue was they would add accompanying music to the dialogue of the story early on. So it's like, you know, you're telling a story around a campfire and then somebody breaks out like a drum set and they, you know, play a little drum beat or something as you're explaining that dialogue. Later on, I think the combination of storytelling and music like the two things started to combine. That's when you get lyrics to music and you get storytelling through, you know, accompanying the music, and then you get like saying the word with the beat, and you get, you know, this process of developing a song, and that is music and dialogue combined together to tell a story. And that's why I personally really love music. But take that even a step further and you get film, which is music, dialogue, and visuals all coming together to tell a story. And that film and animation have been for a really long time the foundation of storytelling for us, you know, and obviously they're incredibly powerful, and I obviously love them to death. But go a little bit further, and now we have video games, you know. And so what is a video game in that flow of things is that's dialogue, visuals, music, and now player interactive component, you know, player engagement. And that's just another component. Again, when you look at, there's purely dialogue driven storytelling. There's even, you could say, I think I skimmed over the idea that there's also painting, which is pure visuals of storytelling. There's also illustration in sequence or painting in sequence, which will tell a story as well, purely visually. And if you added writing, that could be another form of dialogue. But when we get into storytelling, we're dealing with these forms of dialogue. That's sort of like your clock is player engagement. What is the player going to engage and do throughout the series of the game? And when video games have been, to an extent, they've been a little bit lazy in this sense. They just go like, okay, well, we want to tell someone this story, but then what do we have them doing that whole time? Well, let's just have them shooting this guy, and let's have them shooting this guy. Or sometimes they'll just have them, well, let's have them swing a sword at this guy, let's have them swing a sword at that guy. And then other games sometimes it's just like, well, you could jump over saw blades and they could be dodging like big sledgehammers, or they could be, you know, running on some kind of conveyor belt thing, or jumping over big cliffs or something like that. And that is the player engagement. problem with all these things is that the player engagement aspect of games, that has been really crippling to the storytelling. I mean, how do you tell a good story when you know that the player's always got to be shooting somebody? How do you tell a good story when you know that the player's constantly got to be jumping over a saw blade? It really is restrictive to the storytelling. And so the point of all this that I'm trying to get at is that the reason I came to my control scheme with the Land of Lamia, these characters, their movement being the player engagement, just trying to keep two characters together, trying to keep them in a line, trying to keep them down this path. That was my way of creating player engagement that also was able to stay on point with the story. Not if I had given the characters guns and I had monsters jumping out left and right, and it's like, well, I want to tell this very moody, very subliminal story, but I have to have this guy jumping out and then the player shoots him, and this guy jumping out and the player shoots him. I mean, that would have been very disruptive to the story that I was trying to tell. But it's around an hour of gameplay, and it's really just the beginning, and it's what I could do to try and I created the Land of Lamia because it's the kind of game that I wanted to play, and there's a lot of other games that are a lot easier to make, a lot cheaper to make, a lot just for a solo indie developer. It's just they're more logical to have made those games, but just bottom line is those are not the games that I wanted to make, because those are not the games that I want to play whatsoever. And the kind of game that I want to play is the kind of game that I can only, just me working on the thing. I can only develop 3 levels of it, and it still took me a couple of years. I mean, that's how complex this is. One other thing I want to say before I get off topic here, I developed, I want to say like 90% of this game. I didn't do character animation, and I don't do sound. I'm not we're talking about music, and I'm not a sound engineer, and I have so much respect for musicians and sound people and composers, and my sound girl that I worked with is a girl named Daria Kondrahina. I'm afraid I'll screw up her last name. She's Russian, but she was just amazing. And then the other person is Mike Walters, did my character animation, because I did some character animation, and my character animation looks incredibly robotic. So my buddy Mike, who's also a skateboarder like me, came in and he's like, hey, I'll fix this for you. I'll do your walk cycle, I'll do your jumps. And he did that, little cut animation for the intro, and he just was a lifesaver in that department. So Mike Walters, Daria Kondrahina are the 2 other people that helped out with this game, so just want to pay them their respect.